In this webinar, we'll have a first short slide session where I would like to introduce the first steps methodology. And then the major part will be live demo. So you will see midpoint in action, how we can apply the first steps methodology to deploy midpoint. So let's start. As I said, there will be a few slides, including some screenshots, so you can get back to them when you will watch this from recording. The live demo will be on the midpoint 4.8, and when we finish the live demo, there will be some conclusion plus questions and that poll. All right, so let's start with the introduction of first steps methodology. If you would like to hear the real basics, why we have it, what is it? It is guide to quick midpoint deployment of simple midpoint configurations. That being said, it is not limited just to simple midpoint configurations. It can be also used with more complex environment as well. Then the only limitation would be the effort and time, because of course it would be more complicated. It would take some more time, but the methodology is not limited. Second very important point is that whatever we do, we want to do it safely. If you remember from some previous webinars, we already mentioned the first steps methodology, and before that, how to deploy midpoint and so on. The safety was always the crucial part. So whatever we do, we want to have safe deployment, and we will use very heavily simulations feature and account marks. This helps us to prevent unexpected changes or even deletes in target systems, and also will increase confidence in the solution even with low quality data. What you will see here will be just user interface of midpoint. There will be no XML, which if you are working with midpoint for some years might be even strange, but whatever you will see here will be everything done in user interface. And the main goal for the methodology and also for approximately 1 hour, which I will do the live demonstration, would be start using midpoint by connecting your first source and first target system. So this is what you will see. We started to work on first steps methodology last year, and we had weekly sessions, engineers and developers moving forward with expectations, requirements for deployment, also gather from you, our customers. And midpoint was adapted and new features were implemented so that we can do this. In April this year, midpoint 4.7 was released, which supported simulations and account marks. And in October, midpoint 4.8 long-term support was released, which further enhanced everything we need for this first steps methodology for these first iterations. So it was like joint forces, developers and engineers, so that we could make it happen. And actually, we have created not just a methodology, but also training, which also is called First Steps. And there will be session next week, our first training delivery for training based on this methodology. The whole methodology is basically about iterating 3 simple steps: connect, clean up, and automate. And these iterations are what is helping us to move forward in small steps and safely. So as I mentioned before, it is a simplified midpoint deployment methodology, but it can be also used for more complicated setup. Let's see the next slide about these connect, clean up, and automate, what we are doing actually there. So in the connect step, we need to connect new system or systems to the solution. This could be source system or this could be target system. We need to connect it to be able to read, to show, to display, to preview the data, to know what we are talking about. Then in the cleanup step, we are trying to improve data quality, which for source systems might be, we would like to ignore certain data because the quality of these data is low or there are certain mistakes. For target systems, we need to correlate the existing accounts. And during that correlation, we will see that there are some uncorrelable accounts, there are some orphaned accounts, there are data errors which we will detect during the simulations, like midpoint would change something when we would do it for real. So this all will be done in the cleanup step. And finally, the automate step. In automate step, we are going to speed up the processes, especially what was done manually. We would like to do it automatically. We want to improve the efficiency of the solution. And we will cover onboarding, data updates, and offboarding, so joiners, movers, and leavers. The first phase is basically read-only, the connect, and in the automate, we are basically writing the data to the system if it is target system. The context of these steps, connect, cleanup, and automate, is that we have basically three major stages or milestones where we are starting with the methodology and with the identity program. So there will be kickoff stage or kickoff phase or kickoff milestone where you need to agree on the scope of the solution, what you would like to do, what would be the first systems to go with, who will be in the team, you need to have budget and so on. So this is the initialization. Then in assessment, we are trying to do everything what we will cover here in this live demo. We are trying to connect first source and target system so that we can bring some value as soon as possible. And that will be done, of course, by connecting and cleaning up data. And then we are going for automation for these first source and first target system. And then we can continue with other systems and do the cleanup and more automation and so on. Of course, we are going to the ultimate goal, which is the governance. We want to have all governance features that we can have. This blue cloud or whatever it is what we will cover here in the webinar, and not by coincidence, also we are covering this part in the first steps training. This is the list of the first steps from the methodology, which we will follow. So step one, this is basically what is also covered in that kickoff, planning your deployment. So this is something which we will not do by implementation because we already know we want to connect first source and target system. But we will start with step two, connect source system. In our case, it will be HR system, which is able to export data as CSV file. And we would like to connect this system first and preview data. After that, in the step three, we would like to import the source data. So we can access the data and we would like to import it to midpoint. We want to create users in midpoint. When we do it for real, you will see that we will do it in iterations, improving the configuration. In step four, we are going to connect target system. In our case, it will be Active Directory or LDAP. And you can connect it either by writing your resource from scratch, or you could use a resource template. You will preview data, so what is there, so that you know what you can expect. And then we follow on step 5, target system integration, where we will correlate existing accounts to midpoint users who represent the actual HR data, which we have already imported. And here, of course, we will also see if and how many orphaned accounts are there, and we will prepare ourselves to resolve them. In step 6, we will import the usernames. In the methodology, we assume that you would like to use some source of data which could be for usernames, which could be, for example, Active Directory, or it could be main authentication system or single sign-on solution, whatever we are using or assuming that it will be either LDAP or Active Directory. And users usually know these usernames very well. We would like to use them in midpoint. Of course, it is an optional step. If you want to use, for example, employee numbers as usernames, there is no problem with that. But I will show you also this. After we import the usernames, we are ready to start the provisioning to target system. So we will prepare the target system resource for provisioning. We will do the simulations to see what will happen in target system if we would provision like this, if we have our outbound mappings like that. So we will not do any harm without showing what would happen before that. And ultimately, we are coming to step 8, automate integration. So we are able to import data from source system. We will tune up the provisioning to target system, so we will not destroy anything, and we can turn on the automation between source of system data, source of data, midpoint, and Active Directory. Of course, this also means that we need to start generating midpoint usernames on our own, because we will no more import them from Active Directory. And what we want to achieve here will be onboarding, offboarding, and modification automation. So from HR to Active Directory. Step 9 will not be covered here because of time constraints, but is covered in the methodology and, of course, in the first steps training. Override incorrect data. This is the way, or there are ways how we can override incorrect data from HR system if needed. So for example, if there is some incorrect data and HR team is not able or not willing or whatever to fix it, and you need to do something with this data, you can override it from midpoint. But we will not touch this because of time. Why first steps methodology is concentrating so much on simulations? Because whatever you do, the configuration is seldom correct for the first time. Not even that you would make some mistake, but it could be that you will unexpectedly delete or modify data in target systems if the configuration is incorrect, or if the target system data is inconsistent. There could be some old data or some different data which midpoint would overwrite, and maybe it's okay, maybe it's not okay. So you need to know what will happen before it actually happens. For that, we have simulations. And incremental adding of new features is much, much safer with simulations, because we have always the advantage of time. We know what would happen before it happens, and we can do something about it. So this is why we want to use the simulations, and fortunately, thanks to midpoint, starting midpoint 4.7, we can use them during this deployment following the methodology. On this slide, I'm trying to summarize what you need to configure in midpoint if you would like to use simulations in midpoint. So once again, midpoint allows to simulate actions using the simulations to show what would be done without actually doing that. Actions will be only reported, recorded in simulation results, but not actually executed. And we have 3 places which we need to configure. One is lifecycle of midpoint configuration items. For example, lifecycle of the resource, or the object type, or the mapping, or the synchronization configuration item, like unmatched reaction. So this is lifecycle, which you configure on specific places of configuration. Then execution mode. If you would like to simulate, then the task which you will use must be executed in execution mode preview. This is turning on the simulation. And finally, when you are running simulations, in the task, you must select so-called configuration to use, which is either development or production. That's configured in the task, and it means this. If you would like to run the task simulation with development configuration, you or the task will simulate everything which is in active or proposed lifecycle state. If you will run the simulation with production configuration, then the simulation task will evaluate and simulate everything which is in active and deprecated lifecycle states. Other lifecycle states are ignored, like draft, archived, or anything else that we have. So this is the key, and you will see how we are using these 3 pieces of configuration, how we combine it to run the simulations during this live demo. To show you some screenshots and not just details about how to do something, but show you how it looks, this is a screenshot when we are importing user from HR system. We can see that there will be a new user created in the midpoint with username 1001, and there will be 8 attributes or properties added to this user. if I would click on that result, I would see the details, but these are screenshots from what you will see. So you will see it at least once more. Here you can see how midpoint is setting up the attributes all in the simulation. So nothing happened yet, but the simulation can be used and is very much useful also when simulating what target system would do. So this is when we are connecting target system for provisioning, midpoint will show us that, for example, 2 accounts would be disabled and 5 others would be renamed. Plus, there are some other objects which are going to be modified. So 10 of which 7 are here, so 3 other objects. And we can then act accordingly. We can check if this is a problem of the configuration or problem of data inconsistency. You will see this in this live demo. We are also heavily utilizing account marks. This is second very important feature next to simulations, because we can mark some accounts using these marks so that they are not processed by midpoint, or they are just processed with some limitation. If you remember that we have protected accounts for years, then this is protected account on steroids, because we can have much more than just protected accounts. These are default marks which we'll be using here, presented on this dashboard. Again, you will see this dashboard during the webinar. And this is the list of, for example, protected accounts. So that information is visible to administrator or operator of midpoint or anyone who has access here. And it can also serve as a some kind of report to see if the, let's say, number of account with do not touch flag, do not touch mark is increasing instead of decreasing. So that can be also used that way. Okay, to introduce the demo, and after 2 or 3 slides, we are going for it. We have a demo which is based on an existing organization which has a source and target systems provisioned manually. So there is no existing IDM, or by scripts, tickets, things like that. We have one source system, which is the demo HR application. You might probably know it from our Evolveum demo. This application is able to export the data to CSV file. So we are exporting the following data. We have about 16 users which we will export. The attribute which will be the key is employee number, empnum. There are some other attributes, but we will not need to take care at this moment. Then we have a target system. This target system is either Active Directory or LDAP. We are using LDAP, but we are pretending that it is Active Directory. For example, the distinguished name looks like it's the common standard in Active Directory, that we have the given name and family name here. So this fictitious company is creating the CN part of distinguished name as given name plus family name. But of course, this must be unique. So in case it is not, they would add something to the distinguished name, like number 2, for example. UID, or some account name, if this would be real Active Directory, is created again manually using the JSmith convention, but of course must be unique as well. So again, the administrators would add their number or something else to make it unique. As you will see, not all accounts in this LDAP or Active Directory are matching this convention. There are some accounts which are not. So it will be interesting to see what, if at all, midpoint will do to these accounts. And this is, for example, one of them. We have Alex Freeman. He has UID A Freeman, but we have user Gina, which is Gina Green. This is, by coincidence, CEO of the company, so we cannot afford to just rename that account just without any consequences. So let's see what midpoint will be able to do. Now I will switch to live demo. So I will need to switch to the other window, and I already have our demo application. So we have some users in the demo application. We can already export them to CSV file. We have the PHP LDAP admin, which is serving as our primary tool to show what we have in LDAP. So these are the accounts there. And of course, we have midpoint. So our midpoint is basically empty, meaning there is only administrator, and the only resource is their Active Directory prepared so that we can save some time, but we will go through that configuration. But everything else will be done here by us. Okay, so we will create the new resource which will be used for HR. For that, I will use the new resource wizard and I will create the resource from scratch. It is a CSV system, so let's do CSV file connector. Let's call, for example, the resource HR. I will keep the lifecycle state proposed because in this methodology, we would like to simulate everything before going to production. So I will keep it. This is the default in midpoint 4.8. I will provide the path to CSV file, and we need to provide the unique field in the CSV file, which is emp num. And we are basically done. We have created our first resource. We can preview the data. So you can see we have exported the data to CSV file and midpoint is able to reach them. That's fine. So now we need to create at least one object type because otherwise the resource is unusable for midpoint. Again, we will use midpoint user interface. So let's call it, for example, HR person. We know it is account. There will be no intent. I will just mark it as default true. We don't need to do anything at this point. And we know what we will create from this a bit later will be users. I will not set up any archetype yet. You will see it in a couple of minutes. So I'm telling midpoint that this resource can be then used for creating users. Again, what we can do is we can preview data. And now we'll realize that, oh, but there are some accounts starting with 8,000 in employee number, which if I switch to the demo application are these last four. And these are actually some people who don't require any IT account. So I would like to completely ignore them in midpoint. I don't want to import them. I don't want to provide anything for them. So chances are you will be able to influence how the CSV looks. But if you can't, or if you don't want to do that, we can do it via midpoint. So I will go back to the configuration of the object type. And I will configure so-called classification filter. Classification filter is a query. I'm lazy, so I will copy paste it. And I will basically consider everybody who has emp type attribute equals FTE, full-time employee. I will consider them as my accounts, which I would like to use. Everything else should be ignored, which means these cleaners or gardeners should not match that. So I'm saving this. And now I need to do something which is called reclassification of data, which is in the standard resource user interface. If I display all accounts which are on this resource and run this reclassify button, on background there is a task created and it will reclassify my accounts. When this finishes, which should be a couple of seconds only because we have 16 users only. This is the list of accounts which you already know from older midpoints, and you can see we have just 16 of them, not 20. So these 4 accounts are now being ignored. They are not considered to be standard accounts from this HR system. Okay, so we have successfully ignored this. What can we do? We can configure our resource. So we need for sure to have some synchronization policy, situations and reactions. So we for sure would like for any unmatched to create a new user in midpoint, that's add focus. And for anyone who is already linked, we will run synchronize action. We don't need anything else here because from this data, we will never delete the HR data. The CSV file will be never deleted, nor any file of any entry. And we have empty midpoint, so we can afford this. we can keep it simple now. So I will have now simple synchronization settings, and of course, I need some mappings. I would like to create users and midpoint, right? So I will create 4 mappings. Let's start with employee number. Employee number should be name of midpoint. But later I will rename my user, so I would like to keep employee number also in personal number attribute. There we have first name in the CSV file, which I will store in given name in midpoint, and surname which will be stored in family name on midpoint side. So I'm just checking if I have not forgot anything. We should be fine. I will save the mappings. And now I will show you the simulation for the very first time. I will start, for example, with the first one. And instead of the action, which you probably know for years, import, I will use import preview. Import preview is running simulation import only for that particular account. I will need to specify that this should be simulated task running with development configuration, because my resource is in proposed configuration, and in the other choice in production, it would be not used. So the simulation is running and I can see the result. I can see that there will be new user created, 1001, with 6 attributes being populated. And of course, this is my Gina green that would be created in midpoint like this. Now I will show you that we are actually running always in iterations. I have only created mappings for 4 attributes, but I actually need more. So I will get back and add 2 more mappings. So I will go to mappings and add mapping for locality. Locality should be also stored in locality. And I would like to have also lifecycle populated so that we can have either enabled, disabled, or something else. For that, I will use a script and it will be stored in the lifecycle state. So the script, I have it handy, so I don't need to type it. The script is basically short, groovy script where if the value from the status attribute is in, I will return lifecycle state active. If the value is long-term leave, I will return suspended. And if the value is former employee, I will return archived. So these will set up the lifecycle in midpoint. Now I will save it and I can run the simulation for this particular HR entry once again. Still, it's development configuration because that resource is in proposed state. And you can see that we are now also setting the locality and the lifecycle state. So this is how we can add things still just doing the simulation. Nothing has been created in midpoint, and we are able to improve it until we are satisfied. So now we are satisfied. I would like to import the data now. So we have connected to the HR system. Now we would like to use that system to import actual data. I will move the lifecycle of the resource to active state. So now everything which is in this resource is considered to be active, the configuration, and we need to import the data. Fortunately, in 4.8, we have a very nice wizard to create a new task right away from here. So I will just click create task. I know it is the import task, so I will create this new task. I don't need to specify any name. It's generated automatically if I don't specify a value. I don't need to specify which kind of objects or intents or whatever. That's inherited from the accounts page where I was. I will run just a single thread. And now the import is running. While the import is running, I can go to the users and you can see that we have imported everybody from that file. If I edit a random user from here, you can see the values are populated, lifecycle state including, and these users, of course, have linked the HR projection, the HR account. So Now we have done that, and of course we have not imported these maintainers, cleaners, and gardeners because there is no username starting with 8000. So they are really ignored by midPoint. Now, I would say that I would like to have my users displayed here under persons because person is built-in archetype from midPoint 4.8, and I would like my users to be considered as persons. Okay, so I will need to get back to the resource once again, to HR, and I need to modify the configuration of my basic attributes where we specify that we would like to populate archetype, like assign the archetype for these people. Why I'm doing that? Because later I will use this archetype as some kind of birthright. So I will use it for provisioning. So I will save the settings and we can rerun the task. And if I go to midPoint persons, you can see we have imported them. The difference is they have they have now different icon. If I edit any of these users, you can see it is a person. You can also see that full name is being filled for everybody who is person. I will talk later why we have the full name populated, but I like what I see, so I'm satisfied with that. That's the default behavior of person archetype. Okay, so let me see my notes. Now we have connected the first source system and we have imported in several iterations the data from there. Now, of course, starts the more serious work because we would like to work with the target system. So we have the Active Directory or OpenLDAP, which is simulating, pretending to be Active Directory. And I will first show you the configuration that we already have it there. For example, we already have the synchronization situations and reactions. These are typical situations and reactions for a target system. I would like to emphasize this. For unmatched situation, the reaction is delete resource object. I wanted to show you something potentially dangerous and how midpoint will help you when you are using the simulations from bad things to happen. So I will keep it like this. You can see everything is in proposed, so ready for simulation. Also, the whole object type and whole resource are in proposed. So I will need to make several mistakes in configuration to do some harm because everything is only configured for simulation. Except, except of the synchronization, we also have a correlation rule. One correlation rule is currently active. The second will be added a bit later. This one is disabled. The first correlation rule is using smart correlation, using the items, if any one of you have already seen that in older midpoints. And basically, we are correlating using the personal number in midpoint equals employee number in LDAP. So that will be the default correlation. And we also have inbound mappings, which are used during this correlation. They are used only during the correlation. This icon is saying specifically that. This last one is used for correlating employee number equals personal number. The others will be used for the second correlation rule, which we will need a bit later. So let's try to run first reconciliation. What will happen? I have created 3 tasks already in advance so that I can do it a bit faster. And I will run reconciliation reactive directory task, which is in development simulation, meaning it is simulation of reconciliation running with development configuration. That means only active and proposed configuration. Now everything is proposed, so mainly we will see the proposed configuration. I click to the statistics, just like in any reconciliation task, we can see the states. So we have 15 accounts that would be linked, reconciliation is just simulated. So there would be 15 accounts linked. There would be 5 accounts unmatched, and there is one account already protected. This is from the configuration of resource, the old-fashioned protected accounts. One of them is set there. So this is the status of the reconciliation. The shadows were already created, of course. And let's see the simulation result. Now it starts to be interesting. If this would be real reconciliation, you would be already deleting 5 accounts, because you can see that midpoint is going to delete 5 objects. So I will go there. First, I will show you these modified objects, 30, because that would be easier to understand. You can see there are all users from midpoint, for example, this one. And the modification which midpoint is about to do is adding the new projection to the list of projections. So result of correlation. That means the majority of the accounts would be linked, and the projection list link graphs would be updated. If I go back to projection deactivated, so if I click there, I can see 5 objects would be deleted. So Ana Lopez is a problem because this is our CFO of the company. We cannot afford to delete her. The problem is because she has incorrect employee number. She will be not able to be correlated by the default employee number. So what can we do? We can make exception. My exception would be that I will click here and set account mark correlate later. From now on, she will be ignored during the correlation, and I can do something later. I will not stop the whole show just to resolve one user. Then we have mail service account. This is clearly protected account, so I will mark it as protected. Then we have secret admin. Secret admin is actually some kind of backdoor or hacker account, which I would like to show how midpoint can do something. So I will definitely not make any exception for that. I want to get rid of this account. Spam assassin account is protected account, will be from now. And there is test 1, 2, 3. Nobody knows what it is. We don't know if we can afford to delete the account. So let's mark it, for example, as do not touch. We have different marks, like protected and do not touch are behaving the same way, but they could represent different meanings. So I will mark this as do not touch for now. After I do this, I can run the simulation once again. So I will go back to the task, run it again. And now in the simulation result, surprise, surprise, only one account is to be deleted, which of course is the secret admin, because all others, including Ana Lopez, have been marked as either protected or something else using the shadow marks. So midpoint will not do any harm to these accounts. Secret admin is at this point disposable. Midpoint will not do anything yet, but very soon. So it looks like our Active Directory resource is behaving quite well after what we have done. We have set up the marks to represent exceptions, and for everybody else, midpoint is doing the linking, just like we would like to do that. So let's move this resource from proposed to the active state, and let's see what we can do now. So I will switch the whole resource to active lifecycle. That's not enough. I need to go to schema handling and do the same for the object type for accounts. Now I need to save it and edit again. And when we talk about the synchronization settings, I will simply activate all these actions except of unmatched to delete resource object. I will not do it yet because maybe in 5 minutes somebody else will create some orphaned account in Active Directory, and then I would simply delete it without any warning. So I will keep it for now like this, and temporarily I will be not enforcing in real production this delete resource object, but everything else should be okay. Now I can run the simulation once more, this time this one, production simulation. What does it mean? This means it is still a simulation. It is still a simulation, but running production configuration. That means active and deprecated configuration, not proposed. So what is proposed is completely ignored now. This is as close to reality, to real run of task as possible. Now, if I check the simulation results, I can see no problems with deletes because that part which was deleting the secret admin account is proposed state, and that's not being evaluated now. We are not doing any kind of bad modification, just we are attempting to modify the link graphs because we are doing the correlation. That's fine. So this is what I want. Now I can run the real reconciliation and correlate the existing accounts. So I will simply run it. And if I switch to persons, you can see, I will reload it. You can see everybody except of this user has been correlated with their corresponding Active Directory account. So if I click any random user, you can see she has 2 accounts, including the Active Directory. Of course, Ana Lopez has 1 account because she has not been correlated before. We need to take care about her a bit later. But we have moved forward significantly. We have now correlated vast majority of all accounts from Active Directory, and we have not stopped the whole show because of just 1 account which cannot be correlated. So we are now at step import usernames. If we have correlated our accounts from Active Directory, for sure we can import the usernames for them so that we don't see the employee numbers here. For that, we need to go to resources, and first we will modify the mapping which is currently creating the username. So the inbound mapping for HR resource, which from employee number is populating name. I will not yet remove this mapping, but I will set its strength to weak. That means it will be used only if there is no other mapping populating the value and if the value is empty. So this will be like a default login name if there is nothing else, because not everybody would need to have Active Directory accounts. And I need to also modify the Active Directory, and I need to add new mapping there. So obviously this will be inbound mapping. So let's add a new mapping. We can have also name for that mapping, UID attribute, as is mapping, name, and we are going to simulate it. So I will mark this mapping as a lifecycle proposed. That means it will not be used for anything, but it will be used for simulation only if I run a simulation task. I can try this for any single account. For example, the first one. Import preview in development because I would like to see what that proposed mapping will do. And I can see that simulation shows me that the user would be renamed. If I click on that specific user, you can see name is going to be changed from 1010 to A. Freeman. Looks good. Okay. Let's run a simulation for everybody. So again, I will just run the simulation task, which is running with development configuration, meaning everything which is in active and proposed. And you can see here that 15 users are going to be renamed. If I click the details, you can see midPoint will do this. That looks okay. Of course, you might be like wondering why there is still this deactivation. Of course, that's our old secret admin account, which is not being processed in the real runs, but during simulation, because that piece of configuration is in proposed lifecycle state. In simulation, where we are working with development configuration, it is being processed. Therefore, it is indicated here. But what we care is that the username import looks to be okay. So what we can do is we can edit the inbound mapping for UID and we can move it to active state. We would like to use it. Now, if I run the real reconciliation, my usernames should be already imported, of course, except Ana Lopez. She is not handled yet because she has not been correlated yet. But you can see everybody has been automatically renamed because we have evaluated that mapping. So as the usernames were unique in Active Directory, they are unique also in midPoint, and we already have these usernames. We are not doing anything without with these usernames in this training, but imagine that in the future we could allow these users to use login from Windows and Windows password to authenticate to midPoint. So therefore, this could be useful. So now we have imported even the usernames. One thing which we can do at this point is we can get rid of secret admin. So that secret admin should not be there. It is still popping in all of the results of the simulated reconciliation. Let's handle such accounts and let's switch also this part of configuration to production. So if I save this, now midPoint will delete all unmatched accounts which are not marked. So I will save the synchronization settings. Again, we can simulate first now using the production simulation task because nothing is in proposed. Everything is already in production, but it will be simulated. So we are simulating what will happen. If everything is correct, if I have not forgotten anything, we should see, and we are seeing only one deleted object, which of course is our secret admin. Which of course, I can now run the task for real without any simulation. I was already there. Run now, and if I click here, you can see the secret admin. Now I refresh, secret admin is not there. So midPoint has now authoritative setting to behave like this when you run reconciliation with Active Directory. It will, of course, remove all unmatched accounts which have not been previously marked to as, for example, protected or something else. So we have now finished even the import phase, import of username phase. One thing is still outstanding, and that's Ana Lopez. She has not been correlated, and now we have time to do that. So, okay, let's do that. We will go to the Active Directory resource. I will first search so that we can see her. She's unmatched and she has marked correlate later. So for now, she's completely ignored. We will enable the other correlation rule, which has been prepared exactly for this. The other correlation rule is using given name, family name, and locality. We are comparing one-to-one. If all three match, we will still say that this is just a 50% confidentiality because you might have users with the same first names, last names, and locality. It will be just a 50% match, and I would like to have some human to approve who should be the owner. So let's enable this correlation rule first. Then we need to unmark Ana Lopez because she will not be handled by correlation anyway. And now we can try to run the real reconciliation. So reconciliation is running. And you can see the situation has now changed to disputed. If you have worked already with midPoint, then you know disputed situation is used when midPoint is not sure who should be the owner. In our particular case, this is direct consequence of saying that we trust the rule only for 50%. So we would like to have some human to decide. For that, we need to do one more trick and add synchronization action for disputed. So for disputed, we will use create correlation case. And if I run the real reconciliation once again, after it finishes in cases and my work items, there will be a new work item waiting for me to approve. If there will be email notification, of course, it will be sent. Now we don't have that. And it is hard-coded in this configuration of a webinar to midPoint administrator. But there is not much choice to send it to anyone because we have not finished the whole configuration of midPoint, right? So I will click on that work item. It is just an ordinary work item. Somebody must do something, but it is different from approving because now you can choose who should be the candidate which you would like to correlate with Ana Lopez. We have just one such candidate. We know that given name, locality, and family name match with Ana Lopez. The employee number is not matching, or the personal number. That's because of that error in, let's say, deliberate error in the LDAP data. And we trust this only for 50%. That's what I have configured in that correlation rule. So now if I click correlate, owner will be set. So Ana Lopez should be now owning the account. And you can see she has been correlated. The account username has been used. So user is also renamed. Everything looks absolutely wonderful. She has her Active Directory account. Of course, if you'll be curious, like I am now, you will still see that employee number in Active Directory or LDAP is still 2, so incorrect value. But never mind, this will be fixed in a few minutes. So we have successfully correlated everybody, including previously uncorrelable accounts from Active Directory to midPoint. Now we are at step 7, enable provisioning to target system. So I go to Active Directory, resource, and we will check what can we do about the mappings. So inbound mappings are out of the question now. We don't need to type all our outbound mappings because they have been originally created or copied from a resource template. And all these mappings are in draft lifecycle state. So they are completely ignored, like if they are not there. So I will mark some of them and move them to proposed state. Display name, SN, given name, UID, location, family name. I think these are all. I can move all of them to proposed by this. And of course, I need to save it. I want to see how good are my outbound mappings, and I will use a simulation for that. Before doing that, there are still other mappings, activation mappings for enable and disable of the account. So this is also copied from the resource template from which this resource was originally created. Mapping, which is setting state of account based on the midpoint user status. Mapping, which is disabling the account instead of deleting when the account should no more exist. And a mapping, which is doing delay delete. You will see these two when we get to the levers, the offboarding. So I will also move these configuration to propose. So I will see what would happen if. And last part of mappings are credential mappings. We are not using anything with passwords, but there are already 2 mappings, one for generating random password, initial password, because Active Directory account cannot be passwordless, and password change mapping if you would like to change mapping from midpoint to Active Directory. So I will also set these, save these, and now I can run the simulation again. Everything is in propose, so it will be the one which is running in development configuration, active and proposed. And let's see what will be the results. The results will be probably a bit familiar because this is what was also on the screenshot in the presentation. Midpoint is not going to delete anything, that's fine, but there will be some modifications. You can see it here. 5 resource objects will be affected. We have also further categories, like 1 of them will be deactivated, 2 will be renamed, so 3 of them will be something else will happen. Let's see all of them. So Alex Freeman is being renamed. Let's see what are the details. Alex is being renamed because actually he should be Alexander Freeman and not Alex. This is a clear sign of somebody has created this account probably manually and not based on the authoritative data from HR system. So midpoint is basically fixing the things. If you agree with that, then we can simply leave it as it is. We don't need to do anything, and midpoint will rename this account in Active Directory. Second is Alice Baker. So what do we have there? Locality is being changed from Whitestone City to Hot Lava City. Again, I can check this is Alice Baker. Alice Baker has Hot Lava City in the HR system. So midpoint is actually fixing things which were not consistent. So data was not consistent. Nothing will be done. Nothing bad will be done. Ana Lopez, so surprise, surprise, midpoint is going finally to change the incorrect employee number, which was clear mistake, clear typo, to 1002. And there are two more. Jane Anderson. Jane Anderson is going to be disabled. I know why, so I will show you. Of course, if you would do it by yourself, it would take a minute or so, because Jane Anderson is in long-term leave state in HR. That means she should have been disabled, but for reasons I know, she have not been. So midpoint is doing again improvements, is going to fix it to disable the account because she should have account disabled. And last but not least, Joseph Zimmer. Here we can see actually again mistake. It should not be Joseph, but Josef, like in Czech or German language. So midpoint is fixing the data. All the data which midpoint is going to change in our particular case are good changes. So I'm okay. I can do this. I can move all my mappings to production, to active, and everything will be okay. But without running simulation, I would already do it. I will already deactivate the account. I will already rename it without knowing in advance. So the simulation is helping us to see what's going on before we actually do that. So now I will go back to the resource and I will configure these mappings from proposed state to active because we would like to work with them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 mappings are going to be used in active lifecycle state, so for real run as well. Other mappings I will keep in draft. I don't know to use them. The same I will do for activation. So I would like to disable the accounts and enable if needed in this system. And the same for the credentials. Okay. So now our resource is ready to be used. If you want, you can again run another simulation or reconciliation with simulation with production simulation. That means everything which is active and deprecated. We are not using the deprecated lifecycle here. And you can see pretty much the same scenario. 5 objects are going to be changed. This is the Laura or Jane Anderson. So this, everything looks okay. We can run the real reconciliation. If we run the real reconciliation, which should be like a couple of seconds, we can refresh the data in LDAP. Alex Freeman will be renamed. You can see it here. Ana Lopez should have employee number 1002. That's fixed. Joseph is now Joseph, and Jane Anderson is being disabled. In this particular LDAP, we are using room number for that. So sorry, room number attribute is set. So we have done what we should have done. Of course, everything was audited. If I go to audit look viewer, This is the task which I was running and everything the task has done. So for example, if I click on Jane Anderson, here you can see that the account was disabled in Active Directory. And for example, here is the Alex Freeman. You can see the changes, how midpoint done it. So what was in the simulation, of course, was now done for real. The last scenarios are related to automation. We have imported data to midpoint. We have correlated everybody. We have marked some accounts as protected. We have correlated uncorrelated users. We have imported usernames. We have prepared our resource for targets provisioning. Now let's put it all together. So we first need to resolve the usernames. So the usernames mappings which are being used until now will be removed. I will go to inbound mapping of HR resource. And this is this mapping, and let's move it to archive lifecycle. I don't want to use it anymore. I go to Active Directory resource. I have inbound mapping there as well. Mappings. And I will move this to archived as well. There is now no mapping that would create the username in midpoint, but person archetype comes also with object template, person object template. We can use that one, and we will use that one to generate also the username. This template contains also the full name generator, which you have already seen that mapping is active. That's built-in part of a midpoint, this person object template, if you are using person archetype. And there is, sorry, second mapping, which is generating the username that could be also useful as some account name. So it's less than 20 characters. Let's activate this mapping for the person object template. And now we need to create some users in the demo application. So I will create just two because of time. Louis Callahan. And second will be somebody with duplicated or to be duplicated username. So A Baker, we already have A Baker. Let's see how midpoint will work. So I have created two users. I need to export them. And we will try and first simulated import. To see these new accounts, we need to reload data. So midpoint will fetch the data and create shadow objects. And let's see what import preview will tell us. Now I need to use simulated production because there is no more proposed. We can see user L Callahan would be created. You can see it even here. This is the new username. So that looks okay. And what about the other one? The 9001. Again, simulated with simulated production, A Baker 2. So that looks wonderful. This is what we wanted to have. Midpoint is iterating in case the username is already taken. So the last thing which we will do here is we will configure regular synchronization, again using this wizard, reconciliation. For example, like this, I don't need to put the name, but just to show that we can. Interval, let's have 30 seconds. Task will be executed right away. And we should see L Callahan user has been created as well as A Baker 2. As you can see, they don't have the account in Active Directory yet because we didn't say anything to midpoint that it should create the accounts. Now comes the reason why we were using the archetype person. We don't have any roles. At this stage, there would not be any roles. We cannot expect it now. But we have the archetype, and archetype, which we have already assigned to everybody, can be used as a birthright. So we can put there default permissions, default accesses, default things that everybody who is person should have. So I will take it as if it would be a role, and I will simply create inducement for a resource account construction. I want to create account in Active Directory. It should be default account. I could even put my user to groups, sorry, my account to groups, but I don't want to do it. I don't want any extra mapping. I just want to save it. The archetype is automatically saved, and if we wait a couple of seconds, we should see these two users relatively soon. You can see they have been provisioned. So if I click to PHP LDAP admin, of course, we have Louis Callahan and we have Andreas Baker. So provisioning is working just like you would expect. And the absolutely last thing to show is how midPoint is handling the data modifications and levers. So I will modify Gina Green. For example, let's change the locality for her. I will disable Martin Knight, or I will put him to long-term leave. So this should be disabled in midPoint. And Peter Hunter will leave the company. So I will save all this. We have reconciliation now, so we will see it. I will create a query. And we can see that something already happened. So I will start with Hunter. Hunter is former employee. He's in lifecycle archived. This means he still has the accounts, but the user is disabled. All his accounts should be disabled as well. Let's click on Active Directory account, and you can see he is disabled. And there is a trigger which is visible here, and of course also in the list of projections, that in exactly 3 minutes after he was disabled because of this change, he would be automatically deleted. Before it happens, I have a dashboard where we will see it. We have a dashboard where I can see all users who have any account with triggers. So that's only our Hunter. Second widget, only the accounts with triggers. So that's the Hunter account. And users without AD accounts. Currently, there is only administrator. After a few minutes, there will be also Peter Hunter. But let's get back to these changes. So we also changed Gina. Gina has now locality Hot Lava City. If I would check the user's history, so this is the audit log filtered for this user, I can see that really we have changed the locality in LDAP or Active Directory, and we have also changed the locality on that user. So midPoint has done what we expected midPoint to do. And what about the last one, the night user? Night user is suspended. So if somebody is in long-term leave, he will be set as suspended. And of course, the Active Directory account is also disabled. So in a couple of minutes, I will make it faster, but we needed that 3 minutes to go. In a couple of minutes, also this account will be deleted. The trigger is at 13, so we need to wait a bit. We need to wait 1 minute. Or at least 26 seconds after the minute, so still a few seconds. And I will make it faster. I will not wait until the trigger scanner task, which is default in midPoint, which is to be executed in 3 minutes. It's running each 5 minutes. I will make it faster by executing that immediately. Now, if everything is correct, I should be able to see on that dashboard with AD account notices, there are no more accounts with triggers, no more accounts and no more users with triggers, and there are now 2 users without Active Directory accounts. One of them is, of course, our Hunter. Hunter is archived, has only one projection, which is the HR, and of course, if I refresh it, this entry will disappear. Peter Hunter is gone. So this is actually the end of my live presentation. I will switch to the few slides which I have, the conclusion. You have now seen in 1 hour that we have demonstrated midpoint deployment in iterations using first steps methodology. Of course, it was short and of course it was a bit fast, but you have seen these steps like we were able to continue even if there were some issues. We have used only user interface. No XML was involved. We have cleaned up the orphaned accounts in Active Directory. We have marked exceptions. We have set the policy to detect the orphaned accounts in the future. We have automated the provisioning from a HR to Active Directory, now limited to accounts. We could also add group membership, but we didn't have it for the time constraints. We have corrected Active Directory data to correspond to HR data, so data consistency is now improved. And all the time, we were using the simulations to make sure that there will be no unexpected changes, no unexpected deletes. Everything what happened was expected because we have run the simulations. So midpoint was helping us very much to prevent any bad things from happening. If you ask what could be the next steps in this world of this project, which we have been showing, then it's up to you, because you could continue with connecting other target systems one by one, connect, clean up, automate. Or you could continue with connecting other source system, for example, for different population. If there are completely different people who are not covered by this source of data, connecting them should be quite simple. Or you could import Active Directory groups as roles and start managing them. So also their membership through midpoint, from midpoint. If you ask what should be your next steps, so if you want to know more about how exactly we did it, how this all works, not just in 1 hour, but to have some time for that, we have now training, midpoint deployment first steps, which is based on this methodology. Basically, this webinar is taking the configuration and data from there. In this training, you will learn how to do all this, plus the details why it is working like that, and also more, because not all scenarios were presented here. So if you would like to attend the first steps training, of course, contact Evolveum, please. That would be very, very nice. If you want to know even more, there will be other webinars. So 2 of them would be related to this. Resource Wizard webinar, which will be November 21st, and simulations webinar, which will be on December 7, also the others. And there will be more webinars coming in 2024. And if that would be still not enough, then you can meet us at Time Unconference, which will be at the end of January and the start of February in Copenhagen in Denmark. We have there also a midpoint working group. And one of the workshops that will be there will be first steps workshop. So you could have real hands-on on that. You can see the agenda, of course, for this unconference. And if you would like to have some presentation there, of course, you can contact us at marketing. That would be everything from me.